My boyfriend turned me into a joke, so I walked away. I never thought that one simple game night could completely change everything. For the past 2 years, Lucas and I had been together, and I honestly believed we had the perfect relationship. Our days were filled with movie marathons, spontaneous hiking trips, and weekends where we would do nothing but enjoy each other's company in peaceful silence. It felt like we were in this comfortable bubble where nothing could go wrong. But that Tuesday night, something in the air shifted, something I wasn't prepared for, and everything began to change. The evening started off like any other. We were both excited because it was game night, a regular tradition with our closest friends. We had been doing this for a while, and it was always something I looked forward to. We would all join an online game, laughing and joking around, playing rounds of trivia, charades, and other silly games. It was always a time to relax, have fun, and be ourselves. I remember feeling really happy that evening, so comfortable, so warm. It was one of those nights where you feel lucky to be surrounded by people who know you well, people who understand your little quirks, and who love to laugh at your terrible puns. Everything seemed perfect, just like it always was. Lucas had a few beers that night, nothing crazy, just enough to make him a little louder and a bit bolder than usual. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. He'd done this many times before. He became more energetic, more talkative, and I kind of liked seeing him in that playful mood. We all took turns asking silly questions and sharing funny confessions. It was one of those easy, fun moments where no one had to take anything too seriously. I was laughing, enjoying myself, and just happy to be with everyone. Then, someone asked Lucas a question. It seemed harmless at first, just another funny question to keep the night going. They asked him, on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate Mia? I was laughing as I heard the question, thinking he would give a sweet answer or maybe joke around like he always did. I expected him to say something playful and maybe a little cheesy, something that would make me smile, maybe even blush. But then he hesitated. It was only a second, but that pause felt like it stretched out forever. I didn't think much of it at first, but as I looked at him, something about the way he hesitated made my stomach drop. It wasn't like him to take his time answering a question like that. Finally, Lucas shrugged, gave a half smile, and said, honestly, I'm just lucky to have a solid 5. The words hit me like a cold splash of water. I didn't know how to react. My mind was racing, but everything around me seemed to slow down. There was a long silence after he said that, a moment where I felt like everyone's attention was on me. It wasn't a bad silence, but it wasn't good either. It was awkward, like everyone was unsure of what to say next. I could hear some nervous laughter from our friends, but it felt hollow, forced. They were trying to brush off the tension, making jokes to fill the silence, but I wasn't really listening to them anymore. My mind was spinning, my chest felt tight, and all I could hear was the sound of my own thoughts running through my head. Why did he say that? Why did he rate me so low? Was that a joke? Was he serious? I kept replaying the moment over and over in my mind, trying to make sense of it, but nothing felt right. I didn't know if I should laugh it off like everyone else or if I should say something. I wanted to say something, but the words just wouldn't come. I was frozen. The rest of the night went on, but it was like I wasn't really there anymore. My friends kept talking, kept laughing, but it all felt distant, like I was watching everything through a foggy window. I didn't know what to do with the hurt that had suddenly crept into my chest. I didn't know how to make sense of it. After the game night ended, Lucas and I said our goodbyes to everyone, but there was an uncomfortable quiet between us. I couldn't help but feel this shift, this distance that hadn't been there before. He was acting like nothing had happened, but I couldn't stop thinking about that one comment, that one small joke that felt like it had shattered something between us. The next few days felt different. Every time I looked at him, I kept hearing that number in my head. A 5. A solid 5. How could he think that about me? Was I really just a 5 to him? I kept wondering if there was something more to it, something deeper that he wasn't saying. But no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Something I couldn't ignore. It was strange, but the game night that was supposed to be fun and lighthearted had turned into something bigger, something I wasn't prepared to face. And in that moment, I realized that maybe I had been living in a fantasy, thinking everything was perfect, when in reality, things were more complicated than I had ever imagined. That was all I was to him, a 5, just a number, nothing special, nothing remarkable. All the love I had given, the care, the time, the effort, was that worth just a 5? The thought made my stomach feel heavy, like I had swallowed a rock. I forced a smile, pretending it was just a silly joke, just something said in the moment. But inside, something deep within me cracked, and I knew it wouldn't go away so easily. The game night continued as if nothing had happened. People were still laughing, talking, making jokes, but I wasn't really listening anymore. I sat there, my hands resting on my lap, my mind stuck in that one moment, the way he had hesitated, the way he had laughed after saying it, the way no one had really stood up for me because to them it was just a game, just words, but to me it was more than that. I had always believed Lucas loved me, that he saw me as someone beautiful, someone special. I had never doubted that before. But now I wasn't so sure. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe he didn't mean it that way. Maybe I was taking it too seriously. But no matter how many times I tried to brush it off, the feeling in my chest didn't go away. Eventually, the game ended. People said their goodbyes, logging off one by one. Lucas was still laughing, still joking around, completely unaware of the storm building inside me. "I'm gonna head to bed," I said, standing up quickly before he could ask any questions. He barely looked up. "Okay, babe. Sleep well." That was it. No apology, no second thought. I walked to our bedroom and closed the door behind me, letting out a long breath. I climbed into bed, pulling the blanket over me, staring at the ceiling. The room was quiet, except for the faint sounds of Lucas still chatting with our friends. In the living room, I wanted to sleep. I wanted to close my eyes and wake up feeling normal again, but I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice again. "Honestly, I'm just lucky to have a solid 5. The words echoed over and over in my head, each time cutting a little deeper. A 5. Not beautiful, not amazing, not special. Just average. I turned onto my side, curling up, trying to stop my mind from running in circles. But the more I thought about it, the worse I felt. Was that really how he saw me? Did he really believe that? Had I been wrong about everything? I had always believed Lucas loved me. I had believed he looked at me with admiration, that he thought I was special. The way he kissed me, the way he held me. Had all of that just been in my head? Had I been lying to myself this whole time? I reached for my phone, hoping to distract myself, hoping something would make me feel better. But then, my screen lit up with a message. It was from Jake, one of our friends from the game night. "Check this out. You've got to see what Lucas just said." My heart pounded. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the link. A part of me didn't want to see it. I already knew what he had said, and I didn't want to relive it. But another part of me needed to know, needed to see it for myself. I tapped the link. The video started playing. Lucas, sitting in his chair, grinning. The screen showed all, our friends laughing together. Then, the moment came. Someone asked, "How would you rate Mia?" The pause, the hesitation, that small smirk. Honestly, I'm just lucky to have a solid 5. The laughter that followed felt like a knife, twisting in my stomach. The video ended. The group chat was filled with laughing emojis, jokes, people calling it hilarious and classic Lucas. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking slightly. It wasn't just a stupid comment. It wasn't just something he said in the moment. He had meant it. And now it was a joke to everyone. Something to laugh at. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. I wasn't going to cry. Not over this. Not over him, but the pain in my chest was real. I put my phone down and stared at my reflection in the dark window across the room. Was this how he really saw me? Just average? Nothing special? Suddenly, I felt like I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, the air too thick. I couldn't stay. I couldn't bear to be here. To wake up tomorrow and pretend like everything was fine. I had to leave. Not forever, not yet, but for now, I needed space. I needed to be away from him. From this house, from the weight of this awful feeling. I climbed out of bed as quietly as I could and grabbed a duffel bag from the closet. My hands moved quickly, stuffing in a few t-shirts, jeans, my toothbrush, my sketchbook, things I needed to clear my head. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay here. Lucas had no idea. He was still in the living room, probably laughing, probably completely unaware of what he had done. I grabbed my phone and turned it to silent. Then I slipped out the door, into the night, into the unknown. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't Mia, Lucas's girlfriend. I was just Mia, and I had to figure out who that was again. I needed to leave. The thought rang loud and clear in my head, drowning out everything else. My heart pounded in my chest, my hands feeling numb as I stood in the middle of the bedroom. I didn't stop to think too much. If I did, I might hesitate. I might convince myself to stay, to pretend everything was okay like I had so many times before, but this time, I couldn't. I walked over to the closet, yanked the door open, and grabbed a duffel bag from the top shelf. It was covered in a thin layer of dust, untouched for a long time. I shook it off and placed it on the bed, my fingers shaking as I unzipped it. What do I even take? How long would I be gone? Would I ever come back? I didn't know. I grabbed the first few things my hands landed on. A couple of t-shirts, a pair of jeans, some underwear. My movements were rushed, unsteady, but I kept going. I moved to the bathroom, tossing in my toothbrush, deodorant, and whatever else seemed necessary. My sketchbook was the last thing I packed, the one thing I couldn't leave behind. It was filled with pages of half-finished drawings, doodles from late nights when I couldn't sleep, pieces of myself that I had always kept private. I took a shaky breath as I zipped up the bag. This was real. I was leaving. I grabbed my car keys from the nightstand, my phone from the charger, and took one last look around the room. The bed was messy, the blanket still slightly warm from where I had been lying just minutes ago. The walls were covered in pictures of Lucas and me, photos from vacations, birthdays, and random happy moments. I had never really noticed how many there were before. Now they just felt like ghosts of a life I wasn't sure was even real anymore. I turned away before I could think too much about it. As I walked toward the front door, I glanced toward the couch. Lucas was there, asleep, his body stretched out lazily like he didn't have a care in the world. The TV was still on, playing some late-night show neither of us had really cared about. He looked peaceful, completely unaware that I was about to walk out of his life. For a brief second, I considered waking him up. I could shake him, demand an explanation, ask him if he even realized how much his words had hurt me. But what would be the point? He had laughed. He had meant it. Even if he apologized now, it wouldn't erase how he had made me feel. So I didn't wake him. I stepped out into the night, the cold air hitting my face as I shut the door behind me. My car was parked in its usual spot, and I climbed into the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel tightly. For a moment, I just sat there, my heart racing. Was I really doing this? Was I really leaving? A part of me wanted to turn back, to crawl into bed and pretend nothing had happened. But another part of me, the part that still ached from his words, the part that had been slowly breaking for months, knew this was the only choice I had. I started the car and pulled out of the driveway. The roads were quiet, the city wrapped in a sleepy stillness. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, making everything feel surreal, like I was moving through a dream. But this wasn't a dream. This was real, and I had nowhere to go. Then I thought of Sophie. Sophie, my best friend since high school, the person who had always been there, who had seen me through breakups, bad haircuts, and every embarrassing moment in between. If there was anyone I could turn to, it was her. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I scrolled through my contacts. I found her name and hit call. It rang once, twice. Then her voice came through, groggy and confused. Mia? I swallowed hard. Hey, I need to stay at your place for a while. There was a pause, but not a long one. Then she simply said, come over. No questions. No hesitation, just Sophie being Sophie. Relief flooded through me, and I blinked back the sting of tears as I murmured a quiet, thank you. 15 minutes later, I was standing outside her apartment, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder. Before I could even knock, the door swung open. Sophie stood there in a pair of pajamas, her hair messy from sleep, but her eyes filled with concern. She didn't ask what had happened. She didn't need to. She just pulled me inside and shut the door behind us. What's wrong? She asked gently, leading me to the couch. I sat down, gripping my hands together, trying to keep my voice steady. I needed to leave. She nodded like she understood, like she didn't need to hear the details to know it was serious. She disappeared into the kitchen for a moment, then came back with 2 glasses of wine. She handed me one, curling up beside me on the couch. For a while, we just sat there in silence. Then, slowly, I started talking. The words spilled out of me, what had happened during the game night, the way Lucas had laughed, how I had felt like I was nothing more than a number to him. Sophie didn't interrupt. She didn't tell me I was overreacting or that it was just a joke. She just listened, nodding, her expression serious. When I finally finished, she took a deep breath and said, that's messed up, Mia, was all. Simple, honest, and exactly what I needed to hear. I let out a shaky laugh, wiping at my eyes. Yeah, it is. She took a sip of her wine, then looked at me. So, what's the plan? I opened my mouth, then closed it. I didn't have a plan. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I had been so focused on leaving that I hadn't even considered what came next. I don't know, I admitted. I couldn't stay there. Sophie nodded. Then you don't have to. And just like that, I had a place to stay. The days blurred together after that. I ignored Lucas's calls, his texts, his half-hearted apologies. I didn't want to hear his excuses, didn't want to give him the chance to twist things around and make me feel like I was overreacting. Instead, I focused on myself. I poured myself into painting, spending hours at Sophie's tiny kitchen table with my sketchbook and paints. Each stroke of color felt like a small piece of myself returning. I had forgotten how much I loved creating, how much it had always been a part of me. Then one night, Sophie plopped down next to me and said, you need to get out. I frowned at her. I go outside. Walking to the coffee shop doesn't count, she said, rolling her eyes. You can't just hide forever. Come with me to this gallery opening. It's local artists, new talent. You might like it. I hesitated. The idea of being around people, of stepping back into the real world, felt overwhelming. But Sophie was right. I couldn't hide forever. So I took a deep breath and said, okay. And just like that, I took my first step forward. Sophie was right. I couldn't hide forever. For weeks, I had been staying in her small apartment, lost in my own world, avoiding the outside as if stepping out would make everything real again. I spent most of my time painting, sketching, or staring at my phone whenever it buzzed with messages from Lucas. I never replied. I never even opened them. Just seeing his name on the screen was enough to stir something in me. Anger, sadness, maybe even regret. But tonight was different. Tonight I had agreed to go to the gallery with Sophie. It wasn't a big fancy event, just a small gathering of local artists showing their work, but it felt like a huge step, a step back into the world, a step back into myself. As we walked through the doors, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. The space was warm and inviting, filled with soft music and the quiet hum of people talking. Paintings, sculptures, and photographs lined the walls, each piece telling a story. I took a deep breath and let my eyes wander. It felt strange to be here, surrounded by strangers. But in a way, it also felt right. I had spent so long defining myself by my relationship with Lucas, by the life we had built together. But standing here, among all this creativity and passion, I realized I was so much more than just someone's girlfriend. I was an artist. I was someone who had dreams, talents, and a voice that didn't need validation from anyone else. As I moved through the gallery, I found myself drawn to a particular painting. It was abstract, a swirl of colors that blended and clashed at the same time. It reminded me of how I felt inside. Messy, uncertain, but still full of life. A small smile formed on my lips. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I belonged. Sophie nudged me. "See, I told you this would be good for you." I laughed softly. "Yeah, you were right," she grinned. "You should show your work here. Someday." The thought made my stomach flip. "Maybe," I said. One day, we continued walking, admiring the different pieces, sipping on the cheap wine they were serving. I listened to artists talk about their work, their inspirations, their struggles. It was comforting to hear people speak so passionately about something they loved. It reminded me why I had started painting in the first place, because it made me feel alive. Then my phone buzzed. The sound pulled me out of the moment, back to reality. I hesitated before pulling it out of my pocket. Lucas. Even though I hadn't been answering his messages, he had still been sending them. At first, they were long apologies, excuses, explanations I didn't care to read. Then they became shorter, more confused, frustrated. Now, there was just one final message staring back at me. "I don't understand why you left. Can we at least talk?" I stared at it for a long time. A part of me wanted to respond with everything I had bottled up inside, to tell him how much he had hurt me, how much his words had cut deeper than he probably realized. I wanted to ask him if he had ever really loved me, or if I had just been convenient for him, something good enough, but never extraordinary. But then another thought came. Would it even matter? Would anything he said change what had already happened? The truth was, I didn't need an apology. I didn't need closure from him. I had already found it myself. So I typed out a simple message. "Thank you for the good times. I wish you well." That was it. No explanations, no justifications, just a quiet, final goodbye. I hovered over the send button for a second, then pressed it. And just like that, it was done. I didn't expect to feel different, but I did. Something inside me loosened. Like a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. I put my phone away and took a deep breath. Sophie noticed. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think so." For the rest of the evening, I allowed myself to just be present, to enjoy the art, the people, the feeling of being part of something bigger than the sadness I had been drowning in. By the time we left the gallery, the night air was crisp and cool against my skin. I looked up at the sky, the stars scattered across it like tiny bits of light. This was a new beginning.